Well, if I learned anything from this movie, it's that if you go to another country and preach your own gospel above theirs, as long as you're a true, patriotic, Christian American man, or woman, but probably man, it's gonna be okay.
We're not afraid to die. That's why we're gonna win.
I'm not afraid either.
So we have Infidel. Now here's the thing. I normally don't feel a need to preface any review that actually let me sit up straight. I'm always slouching or like leaning back in these things. I normally don't preface any review that I do. I do my review, I give my opinion, and I go forward. With this movie being the way that it is, I feel it's necessary to preface a few things. So for one, you'll know that I'm partially biased in my review. This film has heavy religious and foreign messages throughout the film. Now, how you interpret that, I suppose, is technically up to you, but I like to think I'm fairly intelligent and I can kind of read between the lines in this movie. Here's the thing. I am not a religious person by any stretch of the definition. I don't talk about it on the channel. I try not to get too religious or political on the channel unless it's in the context of a comedic framework. That being said, I've always, when it comes to religion, I try to be respectful of people that are also respectful in their application and practice of their various faiths. So that's being said, that's kind of where I'm standing here on this. Now, I'm going to review this as a film, but also what else it clearly is, which this is, I'm almost scared to say it. This is a piece of fairly Christian propaganda. That being said, I suppose we'll just jump right into it. Long story short, Infidel is a movie that came out this year, 2020, in case you're watching this in the future. I was jonesing for a movie, and apparently franchise didn't want to see Broken Hearts Gallery, so here we are with this one. It's directed by, I'm going to say his name wrong, Cyrus Nowratch? I'm not too sure. All you gotta know about him is that he's done religious films in the past. Like, it's very clear what his framework is. The biggest selling point for this film, and the reason that it even kind of touched my mind a little bit, is because it stars Jim Caviezel. If you don't know who he is, it's one of those names where, I don't know if anybody else got the same thing I did. It's a name that, growing up, I would always hear the name and hear it referenced, but it's never a household name. It's not like Leonardo DiCaprio, and you're like, oh, I know who that is and what he's been in. It's like, Jim Caviezel, where do I know that guy from? Turns out, Passion of the Christ. He has played Jesus Christ himself. This man likes to be a martyr on screen. And this movie, turns out, no shocker, I suppose, isn't much of an exception. Jim Caviezel is in this film to be a martyr for, I kind of view it almost as a modern-day Passion of the Christ. Look, I suppose I'll just jump right into the big elephant in the room for me. I felt this film in itself, and here goes my amateur critique and review, so I'm sure I'll be corrected. I felt like this film, Infidel, was honestly a piece of Christian propaganda. From the get-go, the entire plot of this movie revolves around Jim Caviezel's character, who is a very devout Christian. Not praise the Lord, or anything like that, but almost the scarier one, where it's that white suburban Christian, oh, that's just kind of how it is, and God and Jesus is they're king and they rule, and that's how it is, and no other reality is acceptable in my world. And just the really subdued scary stuff. But his wife, who's also feels like a write-off character, she's in it and she works in government and all that, but everybody jokes that she's a spy. And essentially he's asked to go to another country to not preach the gospel, but he's just supposed to speak with another representative of a different faith, in a community with Muslim and Iranians and all this, and supposed to just discuss faith, but on a platform of equality and open-mindedness. And this motherfucker, he goes to another country, and after talking and speaking like a normal human being, his wife is like, don't do it, buddy. I know how you are. You're gonna start really leaning into your beliefs. And sure enough, he's just a good Christian man, and he just can't not speak the Lord's truth. So then he just goes on a little subdued tirade on international television, another country, basically poo-pooing this country's religion and promoting his as the one and only. And you'd be right if you were to guess he pissed some people off, because he does. He gets straight up kidnapped. He gets kidnapped the fuck out of his hotel, and then he's held captive. They're trying to get him to not really convert necessarily, but to be like, admit Christianity is not the way to go. Admit it's not the way. Allah is all. And like, it becomes this whole thing where it's a battle of will and faith and all this. And he's like trying to hold on. He's in his cell at night and he's like, God, if you're there, just give me a sign. What's it all for in the suffering? And he's just a martyr the entire movie. If you want to make a religious film, cool. I get it. I know that God's Not Dead exists. God's Not Dead 2. I think The Fault in Our Stars gets a little bit... There's a bunch of movies that are out there that lean into religion and faith, but they do so in a tasteful, artful way where you know it's like, yes, they're Christians and this is about faith in the Lord and healing through that power. I get that. But when you have a movie like this, the connotation of the movie basically says Christianity is the way. This guy, he's... Jim Caviezel's character suffers, but by the end of the movie, spoiler alert in case you didn't figure this part out already, he's fine. He gets away with it all, he gets saved, and he gets a happy fucking ending with his wife because he went to another country, he preached his own gospel over another, and then after being kidnapped and tortured for a while, gets to go home because he stuck through with it, he didn't cave, he didn't give up his Lord, and then he goes, it's just messed up in my mind. Call me crazy. I mean, I just think everybody should be able to practice their own faiths and have their own religion. And it's crazier because what little bits of sympathy they have for the other religions, they basically, every character in this movie who's not an American, they portray, all the evil ones are portrayed as people that are loyal to their own God, their own country, and are basically in the same position as we are, but they're all portrayed as extremists who only want to torture, kill, and spread a negative agenda. And the only characters in this movie that are of ethnic or foreign origin from ours that are portrayed in a positive light are ones that, I shit you not, have accepted Christ into their lives and are practicing Christianity as their religion, with the exception of like 2 guards, but they get like a few seconds of screen time to say this. Every character in this movie who's evil is not Christian, and every character in this movie who's Christian is portrayed as like, as in the right, as good people, and just, it really, really is biased, and I did not like that. It left a very sour taste in my mouth, because that's a mindset that way too many Americans have, and I don't want to get on a soapbox for too long. This movie just made me upset, because if you're going to have a theme like that, at least stick to it. Because then we had other subplots where the wife, they were in an accident and the wife was pregnant and she lost the child, so she lost her faith in God. And we kind of touch on that here and there in the plot. But overall, even the wife's subplot takes a back seat to Jim Caviezel's martyrdom. And that just kind of seems messy. And then, he's being put on trial because he's accused of being a spy. And one of my favorite scenes is they're bringing the evidence forth, right, of the evidence of him being a spy. And he had a Muslim friend who he thought was his friend back when they were in America. But things were getting suspicious, so the police went over to the guy's house because they got some calls and whatnot. And they're over there, and this girl's like, "You're an Islamophobe. You're going to march in this guy's house." And, of course, he goes into his friend's, secret room, and there's all this, terroristic incel propaganda, and this guy's not a great guy, but this guy's here and he's testifying against him and all this and lying. I guess he killed his daughter because his daughter brought dishonor to his family and all this, but he's blaming Jim Caviezel's character, saying, "You drove my daughter to suicide." But the judge, who's a very corrupt leader in this nation, is he brings the evidence forth, and he's like, "We have amassed a great deal of evidence," and he just throws literally a stack of papers on a stack of papers on the actual his desk, and then he just holds up random documents that have highlighted words on them, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, "What are you talking about? They're papers. Where's the evidence? Are we gonna hear detail?" No. It's a complete kangaroo court. Is great. I thought it was kind of funny. Caviezel's choice in acting and delivering lines is literally. Caviezel will not speak above a low monotone or a low whisper if he's talking about something, and just, I believe that Christ is the one and only who will lead us into the glory, until he's getting tortured and they're getting the shit kicked out of him. Then he's like, what do you want? Why? What do you want? But like the entire movie, his character and these emotional moments, he's like, do your job, do what you gotta do. I thought I told you to go home. Why are you here for me? You gotta get out of here. Get her out of here. Like, I personally found there were no endearing or likable characters. I suppose if you're an ardent Christian, you would have some appreciation and respect for Caviezel's character, because he's someone who's also very much like, this is my faith, I'm strong, sticking to it, spreading my gospel above all others, this is the way, this is the way. But like, I found no characters endearing. The wife was just trying to be wifely to her husband, and her plot progression was just, I don't have any faith in the Lord or my husband, but now I have to go save my husband, so I guess I have faith in him, and through him, our Lord. There were odd choices in directing and cinematography that I didn't quite get behind. A lot of really, really super random Dutch tilts and choppy camera work in some action scenes, and I don't know. I felt like the director was trying to be artsy in certain spots, and it just didn't fit the theme he was going for with the whole film. Usually you'll see character arcs, right? Somebody starts at A and they get to B, and they've changed as a person, they've grown, maybe they've sank if it's a horror film or a depressing drama, they've lost everything, maybe they die, I don't know. But the point is, character arcs are a thing that exist in the universe of film, and in this movie, I wouldn't really be able to rightly say anybody has much of an arc. Like, Caviezel's still the same man by the end that he's at the beginning. Maybe he might be changed because he's gone through some hardship, but he still has the same views, mindset, and beliefs. And if anything, it's even more ardently so because the enemy has proven themselves to be an enemy to him. His wife maybe has a character arc due to her crisis of faith maybe being resolved, but again, they don't touch on that too heavily. And I think the biggest issue, besides the whole Christian propaganda angle, is that the character choices in this movie are quite asinine in spots. At a point, he actually is kind of smart. Caviezel's character gets a chance to actually, he eludes his captors, locks him in the room where he was locked in, and books it, and gets outside. Now, you'd think in a sprawling city, like even one that's like out in the middle of the Middle East somewhere, like a mountain community or whatever, you would think that when you're running away from somebody, you would either try to, if you don't know anybody around you, you would try to find a safe spot to hide, or you would duck between some alleys. You would start trying to get like on foot and put as much distance and odd location between you and your captors. No, Caviezel gets outside, and I shit you not, starts running down the street, never leaves the main street, asking strangers for help until his captors catch back up with him because he's on the fucking street where he can easily be picked up. I mean, again, and his wife comes to look for him, and his wife is immediately picked up by some strangers that are like, we have a picture of your husband, we can help you, and like drags her into an off room, and immediately like boom, like takes her out, like takes her off the picture for a second. But the point is, like, the character choices in this film are quite silly. At the end of the day, honestly, trying to put all biases aside, even if I wasn't looking at this through a lens of somebody who's not religious, I'm viewing it as a film and what its message clearly is. And clearly, you've got to see the message for this film, and it's really a negative message that I wish that it depresses me and upsets me that this type of stuff is being spread, because it's all about the world. I'm always an advocate of the world coming together, and community, and understanding, and conversation, and accepting of all creeds, colors, and faiths. And this movie promotes an agenda that is pretty much the opposite of most of that. The audio mixing's okay, direction is questionable, characters are all one note and only serve the purpose of the propaganda plot. Another thing, of course, as soon as they go to the Middle East, they slap on the old yellow filter because we're in the desert, which I hate when they do that in movies. Like, it's such a stereotype. I mean, I guess you do the same thing in city scenes, right? You got a New York, a Chicago, and then you have, like, it's all grays and blues and navies and all this. But still, I just hate when you go to the Middle East and it's all yellow. It's like, yeah, sure, in the desert with the sand, maybe, but, like, not everywhere is fucking yellow. Come on. All rants and ravings aside, I'm gonna try not to get, like, too about all this, but I'm not gonna lie. Infidel was not a great film. I think it was an exceptionally poor film. It meets the qualifications for a film, but I really do not like this message. Not great characters. The story was not a fan of. I would almost be tempted to give it a higher rating than I'm going to give it, but I can't, because it doesn't even accomplish its own. First, it's about faith, then it becomes this whole thing about like faith above others, and I'm giving Infidel a very solid 1 out of 5. I thought it was an exceptionally poor movie. Now, people online are disagreeing, of course. I looked at some reviews prior to this. I'm going to have to disagree with the overall, I think, Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes score. It's like audiences like it, and by all means, I guess, if this is your thing, sure, go for it. I have no problem with religious films, although I'm not a very religious person. I get it. And there's some really good religious films that have been made out there. I don't deny that. Some of the most influential films, like Passion of the Christ, very influential and important and good films. But this, I feel, was less of a film about faith and religion, and more a propaganda film about putting your religion and creed above others and being afraid and viewing foreign nations and people in a certain light. And I just wasn't a fan of that. It's mad unfortunate, because I think it could have actually been a great story about, an endearing story about faith and survival with your faith, but no, just unlikable characters, a plot that I just couldn't get behind, and overall, at the end of the day, it's just a movie that I'm never going to watch again, even if you paid me to. That's my review of Infidel. I'm sure people will disagree. By all means, I get it. If I'm an uncultured swine that I know I am to be, comment below, and by all means, open the discussion. That's what I'm willing to discuss it. If you feel like I'm wrong, if you feel like I've called something off poorly, then by all means, open that discussion up, and I will gladly talk it out. But the one thing I just would hopefully like to think people are better than is just forwarding negative propaganda through the guise of faith. I don't know. Just talking about this movie makes me tired and a bit depressed, so if it's your thing, go for it. Enjoy it. But I would say do not waste your time going to see it in theaters. Do not rent it. Don't buy it. I would say don't support it, because I really don't like the message being pushed and that agenda they're kind of working on. But people will do what they do. We are Americans after all. So thank you so much for watching, though. I appreciate it. If it's your first time checking out the channel, you might not check it out again. But yeah, stay tuned for the next movie review that I do. This has been MovieMan, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye, travelers.